Hi YouTube, Freedom for Cat is here, and I'm going to be making a video on clothing and shelter to be added to my survival series. Now, let's get right to it. What I have in my bug out bag is 3 pairs of socks, 3 pairs of underwear, and 3 t-shirts. Alongside, I also have 2 camouflage shirts like I have behind me and 2 camouflage pair of pants as well. Now, all that is in my bug out bag as far as clothing goes. Now, getting back to the undergarments, the socks, the underwears, and the t-shirts. As guys, we can wear each item of those for 4 days before changing out. Now, for the ladies, you may need to add an extra item of each to your bug out bag because ladies, unfortunately, men have the advantage of being able to wear undergarments just a little bit longer than the ladies. Now, let's go into our cold weather gear. Yes, that's cold weather gear. Now, you should always be prepared for winter. Now, I'm not saying you always need to have your winter gear in your bug out bag. That's not what I'm saying, but you should always be prepared for winter. Now, if you're not going to have your winter gear in your bug out bag because it's summertime, then that winter gear should go to your checkpoint. Okay? Now, the winter gear that I use cold proof. Okay? And you can go to coldproof.com and you can research a lot of the thermal gear that they have. Now, the one that I happen to show you is 100% polypropylene, which is very warm. It keeps your body warmth in. Does a real good job of keeping you warm. Now, another cold proof product that I wear it's a mixed blend of cotton, wool, and polyester. That is exceptionally well. In fact, warmer than the product that I just showed you, but those items are still packed away in my bug out bag. Now, one of the things that for me is when I go deer hunting, I tend to be very chilly. I'm 5'11", 175 pounds, so I tend to lose a lot of heat because I'm very thin. So I know that when I'm preparing for winter, I've got to definitely dress in layers. Okay, so what do I have on? Besides everything I mentioned, I wear wool socks when I go hunting. Now, again, wool socks are something you're going to need for the winter time as well. Those are about 3/8 of an inch thick, and they're very, very warm. They feel very good on your feet, and they help keep your feet warm. Now, aside from all of that, okay, I mean the thermals, the socks, and this and that, and my basic camouflage clothing, I also tend to wear a hoodie. I tend to wear a vest, and then on top of all of that, I will have my camouflage snowsuit. So I'm definitely dressed in layers when it comes to deer hunting. Now, also besides all of that, I have a poncho as well, just in case it's raining. Now, you need to have a poncho to keep yourself dry, and that obviously keeps the water off of your snowsuit and your clothes that you have on. Now, let's talk about boots. Okay, these are Rocky boots. Rocky makes a good boot. These are Gore-Tex leather combo boots. These are 1,000 gram insulated boots, which is actually pretty good. The 1,000 grams doesn't refer to the weight of the boot. It refers to how much insulation is put into the boot. Now, you can get up to 1,600 grams of insulation. I do believe they go all the way to 2,000 grams. But when I have my wool socks on, when I have my boots on, I also use a product that's called toe warmers. Now, these toe warmers work really well. I also recommend that these being part of your winter gear when you're in your pack. Now, that you have that in there, those definitely keep my toes warm. Now, I've noticed when deer hunting, when my toes and my feet are warm, my whole body is generally warm. So if I keep my toes warm, my feet warm, I'm generally pretty much all set. But with the boots and the wool socks and the toe warmers, it does a real good job. Now, there's always been an argument between mittens and gloves. Which is better, mittens or gloves? Well, actually, you have two different applications. Mittens keep your hands warm because it covers your whole entire hand, and including your thumb, and the heat is generated inside the mitten. Gloves are generally used. I use gloves for deer hunting because you have to use your fingers. You got to pull the trigger. Whatever it is that you got to do. You got to climb in and out of your deer stand or whatever it is. You got to use your hand as you're going through the trees and the bushes and this and that. Whereas mittens isn't pretty much designed for a lot of grabbing and reaching and doing things with mittens. They generally keep your hands warm, so that's really good with the mittens. Now, when you do get mittens, I do recommend getting waterproof mittens. Do not get water resistant, because water resistant does not mean waterproof. Okay? Now, along with your mittens and your gloves, again, when I go hunting, I also use the hand warmers. These things are great. They definitely keep your hands warm. It's a good job doing that. Now, this is pretty much everything that I have in my bug out bag. Now, when it comes to winter time, like I said, you've always got to be prepared for winter time, because it's easier to cool off than it is to warm up. In the winter time, you definitely got to avoid hypothermia. So one good way of avoiding hypothermia is the fact that you have this stuff either with you or at your checkpoint. Okay, we're getting into spring, we're getting into summer. I'm going to be taking this stuff out of my bug out bag, but I'm not going to be replacing that empty space with new items. Okay, that space is totally reserved for my winter gear. Even though my winter gear is at my checkpoint, I know at some point in time that winter gear has got to go back into my bug out bag. Okay, it's very, very important to remember. Always be prepared for winter. Now, let's talk about shelters. Now, shelters is very easy. You know, are you going to carry a tent? Are you not going to carry a tent? If you carry a tent, that's fine. I personally, I haven't really decided. I do have a tent. Am I going to take it with me? I don't know. The one thing about a tent is that you have to allow for the extra weight. Again, it's the weight issue. But the advantage of the tent is that you can pop it up generally in a half hour, 40 minutes, and you got your shelter all ready to go. All you got to do is camouflage it a little bit, which means grabbing some sticks off of the forest floor, maybe cutting some small branches off of the trees, kind of building it up around your tent so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb with all the multicolors. If you don't have a camouflage tent already, you're going to have to camouflage it somehow. And that's a real good idea. Just kind of build up some debris around your tent. Or debris. You can build a debris shelter out of some of the stuff that's in the forest. Now, if you don't know how to build a debris shelter, I'm going to leave a link to a video underneath on how to do that. A debris shelter, a spider shelter. You can build those. Now, the advantage and the disadvantage to a debris shelter is, number one, you don't have to carry the weight with you in your bug out bag, like as you would if you had a tent. But the disadvantage is that you have to build the debris shelter, and that's going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 hours to build a good debris shelter. There's a lot that actually goes into it, and I will leave a link to the video below. Now, one big question is during winter time, should you bring a sleeping bag? Well, in my pack, I don't have a sleeping bag. What I bring is the emergency blankets and the emergency sleeping bags. And the reason why I bring these is because if, I know I get cold. I'm going to have my thermals, all my heavy gear on, everything like that. The purpose of me bringing a sleeping bag is kind of self-defeating, because I'm not going to take any of those layers off and get into my sleeping bag. Okay? My point is that if I'm going to be dressed heavily enough as it is to be staying warm, with everything that I've showed you, I'm not going to take anything off and sleep in my sleeping bag. Not only that, is that if you don't have a shelter, or if you do have a shelter, okay, eventually you're going to take that sleeping bag out of the garbage bag that it's in. The garbage bag prevents it from getting wet. So if your sleeping bag does get wet, it's going to double or triple in weight. So not only do you have to carry this wet sleeping bag, you've got to decide, do I want to take this sleeping bag with me? And if I do, then I've got to lug the extra weight. So there's always the question, do you take the sleeping bag? Do you not take the sleeping bag? What kind of shelter do you have? Again, to each their own. I mean, when it comes to me, I know I get real chilly in the wintertime. I'm a thin guy. I tend to lose a lot of heat in the wintertime. But I dress accordingly, as I know the heat my body leaves when it's cold outside. So